So this session is about UX strategy focused on storyboarding product value propositions using AI. I'm Jaime Levy. I'm the author of the book UX Strategy. This is coming to you live from Berlin in July 2025. I feel like we have to timestamp things now because emerging technologies are moving so fast. This is a UX strategy course teaser, so I'm giving people a taste of my upcoming course. But if you're not even interested in the course, I really hope that you find this session interesting, no matter what. A little bit about me. I've been working in tech for about 35 years. I have worked for startups. I've had my own startup. I've worked for big and small agencies. I've worked for large enterprises like Cisco and Citigroup. I've ran mid to large scale product implementations. All while doing this, I've always had a passion for discovery phases, with a real focus on advising on strategy. I've also been an adjunct faculty for most of my career. I started out teaching at New York University, and then later on at UCLA Extension, and then USC, where I taught both UX design and UX strategy. And it was because I was a professor and there was no book on UX strategy, I needed to write a book. And so with the help of a former student, I wrote the book UX Strategy, the first edition in 2015, and then the second edition in 2021. It has been a top seller for O'Reilly and is now in 9 languages, including German, Italian, Korean, Japanese, and more. So let's talk about the session real fast so I can jump right in. It's being recorded, so you can watch it at your own pace. After, if there's something that whiz by, leaving your video off is fine, but feel free to turn it on the end during the Q&A. There will be a Q&A after my hopefully 20-minute talk. I am going to go fast because there's a lot to cover. I don't expect you to catch everything, but I want you to get a sense of my lecture content and my visual storytelling style. So you're muted for now just to keep our audio channel clear. As far as questions, please drop them in the chat so you don't forget them as we go, or write them down and save them to the end. I'll try to get to as many as possible. So we're going to be zooming into chapter 6 of my book, which is called Storyboarding Value Innovation. There's many techniques I teach in my book, but this one is what this session is focused on. So the book covers my framework from a theoretical standpoint, also a practical standpoint. There's 4 tenets that make up my framework: business strategy, validated user research, value innovation, and frictionless UX. And we're going to be zooming into 2 of them for this session. Frictionless UX. All my UX design professionals know that we're trying to create experiences that are frictionless, that our users, our customers know how to use without having to figure it out, look at manuals, look at help. We want to create product experiences where our customers can accomplish their goals with little resistance. And then value innovation is a term we're going to be talking about a lot, which is about requiring the focus on our product and saying what is the primary utility of our product and how can we make it an indispensable part of our customers' lives so they can use it and make the most of it. So the term value innovation I got from this strategy book. This is one of my favorite strategy books that came out in 2005. It's in a gazillion languages. Probably the most iconic strategy book ever written. The authors, W.C. Chan and Renee Malborn, cover 150 case studies spanning over 100 years. And they argue that success comes from creating untapped new market spaces. And that's where they get why they call it blue ocean. That's what they mean. It's the idea that we want to swim out like a young fish into open, peaceful waters, free to explore, experiment, and grow, because soon faster, fiercer fish arrive, and those calm waters turn into a bloody red ocean of cutthroat competition. And we don't want to launch our product in a bloody red ocean. So one of the key principles they talk about is value innovation. And the big idea is it takes Michael Porter's 2 ways to have a competitive advantage and mashes them together and creates this diamond in the middle. We want lower costs, which we either get from figuring out how to make our products in a less expensive way than our competitors, or we have actual lower cost prices for our products and services. And we want to, at the same time, increase the customer, the buyer value. This is the value proposition. And so it's really this diamond in the middle that they were looking at when they went and looked at all these case studies, and that was the commonality. And so when I started writing the book and thinking about how to transpose traditional business strategy onto a digital landscape, what it really made me think about was, what are the key features that make up a product's value innovation? And we all know about key features. We talk about them all the time while we're implementing our products and thinking about what are the core use cases. And so in this context, a key feature is it has a unique benefit that showcases your value innovation, right? It has to exist, this key feature, in order for your product to have a competitive advantage. And when key features are seamlessly integrated, they define a holistic user experience. So they're really quite important to identify. And so often we're overwhelmed with these massive feature lists that have everything under the kitchen sink. And this is one from back in the day when I did ABC Networks, and we had to like look at all of these features and come up with some mathematical formula for saying, okay, well, based on the level of effort for the front end versus the back end and impact and really like distilling it down took forever because the client was just like, oh, well, we want everything from CBS and ABC and just put it together and we're better. But that's not true. More is not better. Key features to a product are like ingredients to a recipe. So if you have a ton of features, it's like a mushy chopped salad. Those are gross. What I like is something more minimalistic that has less ingredients. Less is more in this case, because we can have beautiful greens, fresh greens, lovely olive oil and balsamic from Italy, tastefully put together for a perfect salad. So let's talk about storyboarding now. Storyboarding was actually invented here in Germany by Lottie Reiniger 100 years ago. She created the storyboards because she was trying to make her animated feature film and needed a way to visualize the narrative. And since then, storyboarding has been used in so many different ways, in film, in advertising, in game design, and definitely for coming up with concepts for product design. So this example you're looking at here was done by a student of mine, a data science student who didn't know how to draw, didn't know anything about graphic design, but wanted a way to explain his product idea. So he just used, captions and screen grabs from probably Uber that he changed. But here the idea is he's just showing, here's Han, he's trying to learn Chinese. He goes to this app, he picks a language, he finds a tutor nearby, the tutor shows up, and then he rates him. It's a simple concept that he was able to create and narrate through this technique. And the goal is figuring out a way to come up with this idea to share with our design team, or to have our designers involved ideally, so that they can collaborate on this. And we're not so focused on the details of the interface design, but instead on the value proposition. Ideally, we're going to be creating a prototype to concept test. And so the storyboard allows us a way to pretty much dial in on what is the story that we're trying to tell, so that the customer can understand what is the aha moment when we're doing the user interviews. So this one was one not too long ago that I did for a client, and I just used stock photography, kind of mock-ups of thumbnails of interfaces I created really quickly. But, I'm trying to tell the story of executives who are going to have and plan a town hall. And so then I show like a checklist, and then I zoom into how they're delegating tasks. And then 2 months later, we're seeing, everybody sitting in the actual live venue. And this is just a stock photo, having the actual town hall. And then we see the screen of what the experience is for someone who's calling in virtually. And then we see them rating it at the very end. And this was one of 2 or 3 storyboards that I created to pitch to the client some of these big ideas that we had that we didn't really want to like just jump in and start prototyping. We wanted to like have them see it at an initial phase so we could collaborate and get aligned. So now I'm going to walk you through a case study where I actually used AI tools to create the storyboards. And I did this very recently. So what you're seeing is very current. And obviously 3 months from now, some of these tools will be doing different things. But in this case, what we're seeing here is a logo I generated in Gemini AI, Airbnb for weddings. Why did I do that idea? Why was that the case study for my book? Well, my brother on the left there, he had his second wedding planned with his beautiful second wife, and they were like, we don't want to have an expensive wedding. And there wasn't really anything out there to do that. So it turned out that she had to do it using a spreadsheet. So I came up with this idea like Airbnb for weddings, where they could potentially rent affordable, beautiful homes, let's say in Malibu, and have their wedding there and use AI-powered customized packages and so on. So that's what we're going to be working through for this example. So then let's say we have all these ideas for features. We have our ideation session. We have our design thinking workshop. Whatever it is, we come up, with a bunch of different ideas, right? We diverge in all different directions, kind of thinking about it. Then we come back together and start dot voting and converge on what are the best ideas. What are the ones, let's say, that leverage AI in a smart and powerful way? What are ways that are going to save them time, make things easier, make things affordable, and be really, really great? So we have our 3 ideas, let's say. So now it's time to move into storyboarding. So there's 3 steps, really. And I'm going to go into in detail, but right now I'm just going to walk through at a high level. You start by writing the narrative of the value proposition. This includes writing the captions, trying to tell a story from the customer having the problem to having it solved by leveraging your key features. And then you need to create the imagery and the UIs. So these need to be created using AI prompts, and we want them to be impactful and representative. And then lastly is you're going to assemble the storyboard. It doesn't matter where you're going to assemble it. I have used Miro, I use FigJam a lot, I've used Keynote, I've used Photoshop, whatever. Storyboard's a storyboard. You're laying out panels on a canvas, placing the captions there next to them. So now we need to write the narrative. And here's kind of my way of doing it that I think makes it easier for teams. And I've done this in workshops and I've seen it work. First of all, don't get hung up does it have to be 6 panels or 7 or 8? No, it can be what you need, but I definitely recommend limiting it to 6 to 8, because really you want to focus again on the key features. So you start with your beginning and the end, and guess what? Our beginning is our problem statement. Spouse-to-be is having a hard time planning a beautiful yet affordable wedding venue. And then what's our ending? That's our value proposition, or our job to be done, the outcome. The couple has a wonderful wedding without breaking their budget. So how do we get them from the beginning to end? Well, we need to basically figure out how we're going to tell the story by jumping through the interface, but focusing on the key features. So in here, we're seeing 3, 4, and 5, the results of the available weddings, the customized wedding packages that are generated by AI, and the timely reminders. So I know what the story is I'm going to tell. Then comes figuring out, okay, how detailed do my AI prompts need to be? And what tools am I going to use to generate them? So you'll see here, I first started with Firefly, if that's the right name, or is it Firefly from Adobe Cloud, because it was free not free since I already paid for their expensive package. And I thought, okay, well, I want it to be 540 by 375 to fit in the caption. I want it to be kind of a woman in her early 30s, let's say, long brown hair, sitting at a kitchen table in a modern kitchen. That sounds good. I have a rose-colored laptop. She needs to look frustrated. Let's give her a white coffee mug and an iPhone. That was pretty much where I started. And I used the effects from that you see on the left, vibrant colors, studio lighted, and I got this back, and I was like, this is too wacky. So I turned off those things, and then I got something that was more photorealistic. You know, by actually like turning off the effects, I got something much better. And so that gave me several images, and then I picked one from there. Then came time to create some of these UIs. Now you might be thinking, well, I could just knock this out really quickly and Figma, and maybe you can, but maybe you can't. And you're like, you know what? I can just in my head say, I want this to have 4 fields, one for picking out how many guests, one for the day, one for the budget, and say what are the titles, and it's going to be drop down, give it a little bit of details. And then I started experimenting, like what tool is going to knock out something that looks like a good UI? Well, Claude is the best tool out there. It's seemingly for, product design, product development, code writing. So this is where I generated the graphic there on the right. So then I needed to create the chart, right? I needed to show the wedding packages. And so I gave it a reference, I went and looked at packages, uploaded an image to kind of show, well, it could be horizontal, it could be vertical. I want it to be, this size again. I want it to have kind of these different levels. I want it to have these different price points. And then I generated a couple of different images, and it got closer and closer using DALL-E 3. And so I went with that because it's going to be zoomed in. It doesn't need to be perfect, but I definitely needed to show important details like that it was buffets and it wasn't going to be expensive restaurants. And then I took my images and put it in the storyboard. So we have the bride-to-be having a hard time planning the wedding. She enters the details. She sees a result set of the wedding venues. Then she selects from a customized package. And by the way, all this is taking place, let's say maybe over 6 months to a year, like one takes to plan a wedding. And then now it's like a few days before the wedding, they get their timely reminder of the text, and they have their beautiful wedding without breaking the budget. So that's an example of a storyboard. So you might be saying, well, why didn't you just knock out the whole thing using Adobe Firefly? Well, because it made this, right? And this is not really usable. It just had too much information. Typically with these tools that we need to give them like a baseline prompt and then get it to something and then add it on and add it on. So just having it create 6 panels with all these different types of imagery and the captions didn't work with this particular LLM. So I tried it, of course, with Claude, and it did make something sort of closer going down the right side. It had these like tiles that you're seeing, but they were ugly. They weren't storyboardy. So I wasn't happy with that. So I went with our tried and true ChatGPT, which came up with the closest one, which we see there. Now, I still wasn't happy with this because typically when you're iterating on these with teams, you need to be able to change the images, change the text. And so I then turned to Storyboard.ai and used their free tool there, and you get 2 free projects. And it was pretty cool. I just took my captions, put it into a shot list. You can generate the screenplay, which gives you more details if you're trying to really like dial in on certain things. You can even edit the characters, say how old they are, what they look like, and so forth. And then it creates something that looks a lot more like a storyboard that you can export as a PDF and modify. This is a very powerful tool that is used, in the industry for actual long format films and animations. But we can use it for generating storyboards as well. And I recommend giving it a whirl. So the storyboard is a really important tool for collaboration, for bringing your team together, for coming up with ideas quickly and iterating on them. And then that way you're giving a blueprint, a roadmap to your designers so that they then know exactly what needs to be done. And everything after that is nice to have, but this is what needs to be in there. You're giving them, here's the aha moment, here's what we want to focus on. And so it cuts their time down too, even if they're going to create the prototype using AI themselves. So I highly recommend this particular process and experimenting with some of these AI tools for generating storyboards and telling visual stories for getting your ideas across. Thank you very much. Please stay connected with me on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in learning more, I am having my first version of the UX strategy masterclass on Maven